Do we think that there's any truth to this? Is this going to happen, or is this Iran just trying to quell the protests and look like it's doing the right thing?
Unfortunately, John, I think it is the latter. Iran is the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism, and that has been certified by multiple Republican Democratic administrations. And I don't yet see any actions from the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism to change or to curb their behavior. We know that a member of Iran's judiciary made this comment. This comes as for the next 3 days, there are strikes around Iran and continuing protest. And listen, no matter what they do with the morality police, even if they change their name, they still have things, John, like the hijab law, which is women being required to cover their hair. That is still on the books. So right now you see a regime which terrorizes its citizens at home and which funds terrorism abroad, many groups which go after and kill Americans.
Yeah. So there's some idea that the Iranian regime just doesn't know how to deal with these protests, and it's kind of throwing spaghetti against the wall to see if anything sticks. Alex Vatanka, who's the director of the Iran program at the Middle East Institute, said, quote, "The Iranian regime is still very much in the thinking and planning stages. They know what the problems are. They don't know what the solutions ought to be. They're worried that if they make the wrong kinds of concessions, that this protest movement will feel emboldened." You know, this isn't quite a Shah overthrow moment, but there are some people who think it could be the beginning of it.
No, not yet. Listen, there's also new leaked audio out this week, John, that shows that the regime is getting ready to execute at least up to 80 prisoners, people who were peacefully protesting. 10 of those reportedly are minors. So the regime is still trying to crack down. Listen, I was at the U.S.-Iran game in Doha. As you know, I went live with you from there. And one of the players on the Iran team, one of his best friends growing up, was killed, shot in the head from his car, point blank, for honking his horn because he was excited that the U.S. team won. And they're not celebrating the downfall of their fellow citizens on the Iran team, but rather they're celebrating the fact that the United States had a win against this awful regime, which I said is terrorizing their citizens. So continuing to execute citizens at point blank range does not show me that they know how to handle this crisis or that they know how to deal with it.
I want to ask you about China briefly, because that came up at the Reagan National Defense Forum. It happened at the same time that the U.S. Air Force revealed its new B-21 Raider bomber, which is the latest version of the B-2 stealth bomber, which is meant as a symbol to China that, hey, we can get behind your lines if we need to. And here's what Lloyd Austin said at the forum about the coming threat from China. Listen here.
And the PRC is the only country with both the will and increasingly the power to reshape its region and the international order to suit its authoritarian preferences. So let me be clear. We will not let that happen.
So Lloyd Austin is saying that the U.S. military needs to stay strong, but the ironic part of it is that the reason why China can build up its military is because U.S. consumers are giving China so much money in the stuff that we build and buy from there. It would be pretty simple to dry up that flow of cash, wouldn't it?
It would be. Listen, I got my frequent flyer miles last week, John. I went from Doha, the U.S.-Iran game, over to the speech. I was in the audience from what you just showed. I will tell you, I was encouraged by the tone set by Secretary Austin. There was a lot of bravado. But unfortunately, and I've talked about this many times on your show, I worry that the U.S. Continues to have a lot of bravado in the way that we talk. But still, the Biden administration is putting forth a defense budget that doesn't meet inflation. So listen, China is focused. The PLA, the People's Liberation Army, is incredibly focused on the Indo-Pacific, and we're talking a very good game. But even recently, we saw the Solomon Islands in the South Pacific go to China, signal that they were going to be with them on their military ventures. It's those small things that happen in the region that add up over time, where the PLA is getting wins and we're not.
Yeah, well, you know, Apple is diversifying its supply chain, moving some operations to India and Vietnam. But that's because they're worried that they can't get their iPhones. It's got nothing to do with morality or national security. Morgan, good to see you. Thank you. All right.